The Hells Angels biker followed the little girl along a trail of old barracks marks, and the final one led to a dead man's warning. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. It was late in the afternoon when the biker, known only as Reaper, cruised down the empty road, the sound of his Harley's engine cutting through the still air like a predator on the hunt. The sun was dipping behind the hills, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt, and the crisp fall air seemed to whisper secrets. He had been on the road for hours, chasing down a lead about an old connection, someone who might know about his past. But he didn't expect to find her. The little girl was standing on the side of the road, her face streaked with dirt, her clothes torn and weathered by the elements. She was small, no older than 7 or 8, and her wide eyes were filled with something Reaper couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe, or something darker. As he slowed the bike, the girl raised a trembling hand and pointed down the road, toward the remains of a long-abandoned military barracks. "You need to follow the marks," she said in a quiet, hoarse voice. Reaper felt a chill run down his spine. He had seen many things on the road, but this was something new. The girl didn't seem afraid of him, but her eyes told a story of pain, of something she had seen that no child should ever experience. Reaper dismounted, his boots thudding against the cold pavement, and knelt down to her level. "What's going on here? Why are you out here alone?" The girl glanced up at him, her gaze sharp, as if she had seen far too much for someone so young. "They're looking for something," she whispered. "Something dangerous." She turned and started walking toward the barracks, her small feet barely making a sound on the cracked ground. Without a word, Reaper followed her. As they walked deeper into the crumbling remains of the barracks, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with the scent of decay and abandonment. It was as if the place itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The girl led him to a faded trail marked by old, rusted symbols painted on the walls, symbols that seemed to have been left by someone long gone. Each mark seemed to lead them further into the heart of the forgotten military complex, but with every step, the sense of danger grew stronger. Reaper knew he had to be careful. His instincts as a biker, and as a man who had spent years living on the edge, told him that something big was about to unfold. They reached a crumbling building at the far end of the complex, where the last of the marks led to a hidden door, barely visible in the dimming light. The girl stopped, her face pale, her lips trembling. "He's inside," she said. Reaper didn't need to ask who he was. He could feel it, the air crackling with tension, like the calm before a storm. The door creaked open as Reaper pushed it, revealing a dark room. In the center of the room was an old, wooden desk covered in papers and dust, and in the far corner, a figure slumped in a chair. Reaper's eyes narrowed as he stepped forward. The man, his face pale and lifeless, had a note pinned to his chest. A warning. The room was silent, save for the distant sound of the wind howling through the broken windows. Reaper stood still for a moment, absorbing the weight of the situation. This wasn't just about an old connection or a forgotten past. Something bigger was at play here, and the little girl was the key to unlocking it. He turned to look at her, but she was already gone, vanished into the shadows, leaving behind only the trail of old barracks marks that had led him here. I don't know who the girl was, but Reaper knew one thing for sure. Her sudden disappearance after leading him to the dead man's warning wasn't a coincidence. He stood still for a moment, processing everything around him. The room, filled with dust and stale air, felt like it had been untouched for years. The lifeless body slumped in the corner held a secret, a warning, and he wasn't about to walk away from it. Reaper stepped closer to the body, noticing the note pinned to the man's chest. He carefully pried it off and unfolded it, his eyes scanning the hastily scribbled words. "They're coming for you. Don't trust anyone." The note seemed out of place, a message too urgent to ignore. Reaper's instincts kicked in. He had to move fast. The dead man wasn't just a casualty. He was part of something much bigger. Someone had been trying to protect him. He looked around the room, hoping for some other clue. The desk was cluttered with old documents, Maps, plans, and photographs, all pointing to the same thing. A network, deep and dangerous. The man's involvement in it was clear, but why had he left a warning? Why had the little girl brought him here? It was too much for one man to figure out alone, but Reaper had never been the kind of person to back down. He pocketed the note and photographs, taking one last look around the room before exiting. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the barracks. The wind had picked up, howling through the broken windows, but Reaper wasn't alone. He could feel eyes on him. Someone was watching. He moved quickly, trying to shake off the sensation of being followed. His mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle the dead man had left behind. As he made his way out of the complex, he spotted movement in the distance. A figure appeared in the fog, walking toward him with purpose. Reaper's hand instinctively moved to his gun, but as the figure drew closer, he saw it was the little girl from earlier. She was standing near the entrance, waiting for him, her expression unreadable. "What do you want?" Reaper asked, his voice low and cautious. The girl didn't respond immediately. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder, as if making sure no one was nearby. "You don't understand," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "They're coming for you. They always come for the ones who know too much." Reaper felt a chill run down his spine. The girl was right. He had stumbled into something much bigger than he anticipated, and now there was no turning back. "Who are they?" Reaper asked. The girl hesitated, her eyes darting back and forth before meeting his gaze. "The ones who control everything," she said. "They're the reason he's dead. The reason the warnings are left behind. They don't want anyone to know what he knew." Reaper's grip on the gun tightened. This wasn't just a simple mission anymore. It was a fight for survival. "Why me?" he asked. "Why bring me here?" The girl's expression softened, and for the first time, there was a hint of vulnerability in her eyes. "Because you're the only one who can stop them," she said. "You're the one they're afraid of." Reaper stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. He had never been anyone's hero. He was just a biker, a loner with a past he preferred to keep buried. But something about her words, something about this whole mess, made him feel like the last piece of a puzzle he never asked to solve. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty building inside him. The girl looked at him with a serious expression. "Find the truth. The truth about who they really are. And stop them before it's too late." With that, she turned and disappeared into the mist, leaving Reaper alone once again. He was left standing there, holding nothing but the weight of her words and the dead man's warning. The silence around him felt heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to make the next move. He knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. There was no going back. And whatever the truth was, it was buried deep, hidden in the shadows, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it. I stood there in the mist, the silence stretching between the girl's words and my thoughts. My grip tightened around the note I had taken from the dead man's chest, and my mind raced. Who were they? Who were these people she kept referring to? And why had I been pulled into this mess? I wasn't a hero. Hell, I wasn't even sure I was a good man. I had my past, my demons, and that's exactly how I liked it. But now, this little girl's words rattled in my brain, demanding that I play a part in something bigger than myself. "Find the truth," she had said. But where do you start when the truth is buried beneath layers of lies and deceit? I shoved the note into my jacket pocket and walked out of the barracks, my boots crunching over the gravel. The cold air cut through the night, but I could feel the weight of the situation settling in. I wasn't just being watched by someone. I was being hunted, and I wasn't sure I could outrun it. As I made my way back to my bike, my eyes scanned the area. It was quiet, too quiet. No cars, no movement in the shadows. But I knew better than to think I was alone. I had to make a decision. Get out of here, or dig deeper. My mind made up for me as I straddled my bike, the engine roaring to life beneath me. The girl's warning echoed in my ears. "They're coming for you." I had no idea who they were, but I wasn't about to let fear dictate my next move. I drove through the empty streets of the small town, the only sound the hum of my Harley cutting through the cold night. I needed answers, and the only place I knew to start was the old man's cabin, the one the dead man had been protecting with his final breath. As I neared the edge of town, the familiar sight of the dilapidated cabin appeared in the distance. It had been abandoned for years, but there was something about it that told me this place held the key to everything. I parked my bike just outside the cabin and approached cautiously. The air was thick with tension, every step I took echoing through the empty landscape. I didn't know what to expect when I stepped inside, but I knew one thing. Whatever secrets this place held, they were not meant for the faint of heart. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the darkness inside swallowing me whole. I pulled out a flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness, revealing the dust and decay that had settled over the years. But as I stepped further in, I saw it. A trapdoor, hidden beneath a layer of old rugs and furniture. My heart skipped a beat. It was too convenient, too obvious. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. I pulled the rug back, revealing the worn wooden handle, and with a firm grip, I yanked it open. A dark staircase led downward into the earth, and for a moment, I hesitated. There was no telling what I would find down there. But I had already come too far to turn back now. I descended carefully, my flashlight guiding my way through the tight, claustrophobic tunnel. The air was damp, the walls dripping with moisture, and the smell of earth and mildew filled my nostrils. The deeper I went, the more the sense of unease grew. What the hell had I gotten myself into? As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I was met with a small, dimly lit room. A single table sat in the center, cluttered with old papers, maps, and photographs. My eyes scanned the room, landing on a photograph of the same man whose body I had found earlier. He was younger in the picture, standing next to a man who appeared to be his superior, an older man with cold, calculating eyes. I grabbed the photo and studied it closely, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was this man? And why had he been involved in this secretive operation? Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from behind me, and I spun around, my hand instinctively reaching for the gun at my waist. But before I could react, I heard a voice, a low, gravelly voice. I knew you'd come here. I froze, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. The figure that appeared from the shadows was familiar, but I couldn't place him. His face was weathered, scarred, and his eyes held a dangerous glint. Who are you? I demanded. Someone who's been watching you, he replied, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. And I think you've been digging in the wrong place. I kept my hand on my gun, my heart pounding as the man stepped further into the dim light. His presence was suffocating, his eyes calculating as they studied me. I couldn't tell if he was friend or foe, but the way he spoke, the way he stood, told me one thing for sure. This man knew more than he was letting on. Who are you? I repeated, my voice steady, but the tension in the room was palpable. He raised an eyebrow, as if surprised by my insistence. I told you. I've been watching you, he said, his voice rough, like gravel scraping against metal. You've been digging into things you shouldn't. I didn't lower my guard. What's that supposed to mean? I asked. He chuckled, a low, dry sound that made my skin crawl. You think the old man's warning was just for you? You think you're the only one who's been looking for answers? He took a step closer, and I instinctively took a step back. Who's looking for answers? I pressed, trying to make sense of his cryptic words. He studied me for a moment, as if weighing the situation. Let's just say, I'm not the only one who's interested in the little girl you met. And the marks she led you to? Those marks are part of something bigger, something you don't even understand yet. My grip on the gun tightened. I didn't like where this was going. You know about the girl? I asked, my voice a little sharper. He nodded slowly, a knowing look crossing his face. I know more than you think. And if you want to get to the truth, you'll need to stop acting like a lone wolf and start thinking bigger. I wasn't sure if I could trust him, but his words struck a chord with me. This wasn't just some random set of events I had stumbled into. Something bigger, something darker, was pulling the strings behind the scenes. The old man, the girl, the marks, they were all part of a puzzle, and I was just one piece of it. I took a deep breath, trying to push down the unease gnawing at me. What do you want from me? I asked, finally lowering my gun, but still keeping it close. I want you to understand that you're in over your head, he said, his voice serious now. The people you're up against, they don't play by the rules. And if you think you can take them down on your own, you're wrong. I felt a chill run down my spine. So what do you want me to do? I asked, my mind racing. Come with me, he said, his tone suddenly urgent. There's a safe house not far from here. It's the only place you'll be safe right now. We need to figure out who's pulling the strings and why they want you dead. I hesitated. I didn't trust him, but I didn't have a choice. The girl's warning echoed in my mind. They're coming for you. I couldn't run. Not anymore. Lead the way, I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. He nodded and turned, heading toward the back of the room. I followed, keeping a close eye on him. As we made our way out of the cabin, the sound of my boots hitting the dirt was the only thing breaking the silence. The air outside was cold, the sky dark with clouds threatening rain. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but I couldn't turn back. Whatever was coming, I had to face it head on. As we walked, the man didn't speak, and I didn't ask any more questions. I just followed, trusting that he knew where he was taking me. After what seemed like hours, we reached a small, unmarked house on the outskirts of town. It looked abandoned, the windows dark, but there was a faint light flickering inside. He opened the door, and we stepped into the small, dimly lit room. "Stay here," he said, his voice low. "I'll be right back." I didn't argue. I had no choice but to wait. As the door closed behind him, I sat down on the old couch, trying to piece together what I had learned. This was just the beginning. The girl, the old man, the warning, it was all part of something much bigger than I had anticipated. And if I was going to survive, I had to figure it out fast. The door creaked open, and the man stepped back inside, his expression grim. "They know you're here," he said. "It's time to go." I stood up from the couch as the man closed the door behind him. The tension in the room was palpable, but I couldn't allow myself to let my guard down. Not now. He had said they knew we were here, but I still had no idea who they were. All I knew was that the clock was ticking, and if I was going to make it out of this alive, I had to trust the man, at least for now. My thoughts were interrupted by a sharp knock on the door. The man stiffened, his hand going to the gun holstered at his waist. "Stay quiet," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I nodded, my heart racing in my chest. The seconds felt like hours as we both waited. The silence thick in the room. Whoever was on the other side of that door wasn't here for a friendly chat. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Then, without warning, the door swung open, revealing a tall, shadowy figure standing in the doorway. The man didn't flinch, his eyes narrowing as he sized up the newcomer. "You brought him here," the stranger said, his voice low and threatening. "You're making a mistake." The man didn't move, but his hand never left the grip of his gun. "This is between us," he replied, his voice calm, but the tension was clear in his posture. The stranger stepped inside, his gaze flicking to me for a moment before he fixed it back on the man. "You think you can just run from this? You know who's behind this. They won't stop until they get what they want." "What they want," the man replied coolly, "is something I'm not handing over." The stranger scoffed, stepping closer. "You really think you can play hero in all of this?" he said, his eyes flashing with malice. "You're just a pawn in their game. Both of you are." The man tensed, but before he could respond, the stranger turned his attention to me. "And you," he said, his voice colder than before. "You don't even know what you've gotten yourself into. You think you're safe just because you're hiding in a rundown house." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words press down on me. My eyes flicked to the man standing beside me, but he didn't seem afraid. He wasn't going to let this stranger intimidate us. "Not now. I'm not running from anything," the man finally said, his voice low and measured. "And I'm not handing over anything to anyone." The stranger smirked. "You will," he said simply. "You'll either give it to us willingly or we'll take it. There's no middle ground." With that, he turned and walked toward the door. But before he left, he paused, his eyes narrowing as he glanced back at me. "And as for you, little girl," he said, his tone mocking, "you'll learn soon enough. There's no place for you in this world. Not unless you're ready to face the consequences." I clenched my fists, fury building in my chest. I wasn't some helpless victim. I wasn't some scared child. I had a part to play in this, whether I wanted to or not. The stranger left, slamming the door behind him, and I stood there, breathing heavily, my hands shaking. The man didn't say anything at first, but his eyes never left me. "What's your plan now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the anger swirling inside. He let out a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "We need to get out of here. Fast." His words were blunt, but there was a sense of urgency in them that matched the rising panic in my chest. "Where will we go?" I asked, trying to calm myself. "We'll head to the safe house," he said. "It's the only place left where we can regroup." "And then?" I asked, my mind already working ahead. "Then we find the truth," he said, his gaze hardening. The truth about who's pulling the strings and why they want you. And we stop them before it's too late. The resolve in his voice was enough to make me believe he meant it. But as we stepped out into the night, the darkness pressed down on us like a weight. There was no running from this anymore. We were in it, and the truth was waiting to be uncovered. The man and I made our way down the street, my thoughts racing as I tried to piece together what was happening. Who were these people? And what was it that they wanted from me? The questions were endless, and the answers seemed so far out of reach. But one thing was for sure, I wasn't going to stop until I had them. I had to know. We reached the safe house a few minutes later, and as the man opened the door, I felt the weight of the world settle into my chest. The fight had only just begun, and I was ready to face it, no matter what it took. I stood in the darkened safe house, my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to make sense of everything that had happened. The man, whose name I still didn't know, paced the room like a caged animal. He had been quiet since we arrived, his eyes darting around the space as if searching for something, but I wasn't sure what. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, the weight of the secrets pressing down on us. I tried to steady my breathing, but the tension was suffocating. What the hell had I gotten myself into? I glanced at him, wondering if he was going to speak first or if I would have to break the silence. I had a lot of questions, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just about me anymore. There was something bigger going on, something far beyond my understanding. He stopped pacing and turned to face me. His eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time, I saw something other than cold calculation in them. It was regret? Maybe it was something deeper, something he wasn't ready to admit. "You're in this now," he said, his voice low and rough. "There's no turning back." I nodded, trying to shake the feeling that I was in way over my head. "I know," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside. "What's next?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to a small table in the corner, his fingers brushing over a stack of papers and old photographs. "We need to find out who they are," he said after a long pause. "Who's behind all of this? And we need to figure out why they're after you." His words hung in the air like a heavy fog. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this. I had spent my life trying to stay out of trouble, and now, I was in the middle of something I couldn't even begin to understand. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now. "And how do we do that?" I asked, stepping closer to the table. "We have to find the connections," he said, flipping through the papers on the table. "This isn't just some random conspiracy. These people have been working in the shadows for years. They've infiltrated everything, government, business, even the underground. If we don't move quickly, they'll erase anyone who gets in their way." The room felt colder suddenly, the air thick with danger. I didn't know what to believe anymore. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something much bigger. "How do we start?" I asked, determination rising in my chest. "We go back to the beginning," he said, his eyes narrowing. "We follow the trail, piece by piece, until we find out who's pulling the strings. And when we do, we make them pay." His words sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't just a mission for him. It was personal. I could feel the weight of that in his voice, the anger simmering beneath the surface. He wasn't just trying to stop these people. He wanted revenge. I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not, but it was the only thing we had to hold on to. "All right," I said, my voice steady. "Let's do it." He turned away from the table, his gaze fixed on the door. "We don't have much time. They'll be looking for us soon." Without another word, he motioned for me to follow him. We moved quickly through the dark house, each step filled with the urgency of someone who knew we were being hunted. As we stepped out into the night, the air felt even colder. The sound of distant footsteps echoed in the quiet streets, and I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that was about to unfold. We were in this together now. Whatever came next, we had no choice but to face it. As we made our way to the car, the reality of the situation hit me. This wasn't just a chase anymore. It was a war that we didn't ask for, but one we were now a part of. And there was no going back. The man didn't speak as he started the engine. He kept his eyes on the road, his face hard and set with determination. I could feel the tension in the air, but there was something else there, too. Something almost like hope. We weren't out of this yet, but we were going to fight. And that was all that mattered. I sat in the passenger seat, my hands gripping the edge of the door as the car sped down the dark road. The man didn't say a word, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, his jaw clenched. The silence between us was heavy, but I could feel the tension mounting. We were being hunted, and we both knew it. We had no time to waste. I glanced at him, wondering what was going through his mind, but he didn't acknowledge me. His focus was absolute, and that gave me a sense of urgency I hadn't felt before. Whatever came next, we had to be prepared. Where are we going? I finally broke the silence, my voice steady, but I could feel my pulse quickening. We're heading to the old warehouse on the outskirts of town, he said without looking at me. It's the last place they'll expect us to go. I nodded, not sure what to expect when we got there. The man wasn't one for explaining things, but I trusted him more than anyone else at this point. I had no choice but to. How do you know they won't find us? I asked, trying to hide the uncertainty in my voice. Because they're not looking for us there, he replied, his voice cold and sure. That warehouse holds the key to everything. If we can get there before they do, we might just be able to turn the tables. I tried to make sense of what he was saying. What did the warehouse hold? What was it that they didn't want us to find? The questions swirled in my mind, but I didn't have time to dig for answers. We had to move fast. The car turned onto a deserted road, the headlights cutting through the fog that had rolled in from the mountains. It wasn't far now, and every minute that passed felt like an eternity. My mind kept returning to the girl, the one who had led me here. Was she still out there? Was she safe? And what about the man who had died? His warning had meant something, but I still didn't fully understand it. The car screeched to a halt in front of the warehouse, the tires skidding on the wet ground. We both jumped out, the sound of the engine dying behind us. The building loomed in front of us, dark and abandoned, the only light coming from the faint glow of the street lamps far in the distance. The man moved toward the entrance, his body tense, every step measured. I followed close behind, my heart pounding in my chest. As we reached the door, he stopped, turning to face me. Stay close, he said, his voice low. We don't know who or what's inside. Just follow my lead. I nodded, and he pushed open the door. The hinges creaked, and we stepped into the darkness. The air inside was thick with the smell of rust and old wood. I could barely make out the outlines of crates and equipment scattered around the room, the faint sound of dripping water echoing from somewhere deep within the building. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The man moved silently through the shadows, his eyes scanning the room, as if expecting something to jump out at us. I stayed close, my senses on high alert. Every creak of the floorboards underfoot made my skin crawl. We moved deeper into the warehouse, past rows of crates, until we reached the far corner. The man stopped, his hand resting on an old metal cabinet. This is it, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He pulled the door open, revealing a hidden compartment inside. This is where it all started. My eyes widened as I looked inside. The compartment was filled with files, photographs, and documents, each one more damning than the last. They were all connected to the group we were up against, the people who had been pulling the strings from the shadows. The man began rifling through the papers, his hands moving with urgency. This is it, he said again, his voice rising with excitement. This is what they've been hiding. These files hold everything, names, locations, everything we need to take them down. I took a step closer, my eyes scanning the papers as he spread them out on the floor. My heart raced as I saw the connections between the people in the photos and the businesses, the government officials, even the law enforcement officers who had been involved. This wasn't just some rogue operation. This was a network, an entire system built on lies, corruption, and manipulation. The man's hands shook as he picked up a photo of a man I recognized, someone who had been involved in the case from the beginning. This is the leader, the man said, pointing at the photo. He's the one behind all of this. I leaned in closer, my stomach dropping as I saw the name written on the back of the photo, Jonah Blackwood. It sent a chill down my spine. I had heard rumors about him, whispers in the underworld, but I never imagined I'd be staring at his face now, looking at the man who was responsible for everything. The man turned to me, his eyes burning with determination. We're going after him. We're ending this. His words were a promise, but as I looked at the files, the reality of what we were up against settled in. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for justice, and we were going to bring them all down, no matter the cost. I could feel the weight of the documents in my hands, the secrets they held pressing down on me like a ton of bricks. The man was already pacing, the intensity in his movements showing just how close we were to the edge. Jonah Blackwood. That name echoed in my mind, as if it were a warning, a signal that everything had changed. We had stumbled onto something massive, something far bigger than I had anticipated. I glanced at the papers spread out on the floor. Every one of them connected to Blackwood, to the corruption that ran deeper than I could have imagined. I was no stranger to dark dealings, but this was something else entirely. This is it, the man muttered to himself, going over the documents again, his finger tracing lines and connections. I watched him, trying to piece together what he already knew. He had been in this world for years, a man who understood the way shadows moved. But even he seemed rattled by what we were uncovering. "We have to move fast," he said finally, looking up at me with steely eyes. "This isn't just about taking down one man. This is about tearing down a whole damn system." I nodded, trying to steady my breath. He was right. Blackwood wasn't just some criminal mastermind. He was the head of a sprawling network, a network that had infiltrated every layer of society. The people who'd been helping him, the officials, the businessmen, even the law enforcement, had been covering his tracks for years. It felt like we were standing at the precipice of something monumental. The man didn't wait for me to catch my breath. He grabbed his jacket from the chair, pulling it on with swift movements. "Get your things. We're going after him now." I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my bag, slinging it over my shoulder, and followed him out of the warehouse. The rain had started to fall, a heavy drizzle that made the world feel colder, darker, more suffocating. The sound of our footsteps was the only noise in the empty street, the city around us feeling eerily quiet. The man led the way, walking with purpose, and I followed close behind. We didn't speak as we moved through the streets, the tension between us thick with the weight of what was coming. We were on the edge of something dangerous, something deadly. The closer we got to our destination, the more the air seemed to hum with unease. "We don't have much time," the man said, his voice grim. "Once Blackwood realizes we're onto him, he'll disappear. We need to find him before that happens." My pulse quickened. "And then what?" I asked, not sure if I wanted to know the answer. "We end this," he said, his voice low and determined. "We bring him down. All of them." We reached the abandoned building a few minutes later, the place that had once been a hub for Blackwood's operation. The man's face was hard, his expression focused as he scanned the area. "Stay close," he muttered, pulling out a gun. I did as I was told, my hand instinctively going to the knife I kept in my pocket. The world felt too quiet, the kind of silence that made your skin crawl. The building loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. We crept inside, moving through the hallways, every step measured, every sound amplified in the stillness. The man led me down a long corridor, his eyes flicking to every shadow, every corner. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that we were walking right into the heart of the storm. "You ready?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my breath shallow, my hand tight around my weapon. We had come this far. There was no turning back. We reached the door at the end of the hallway, the one that led to Blackwood's inner sanctum. The man didn't hesitate. He kicked the door open, and we rushed inside. The room was dimly lit, the faint glow of a desk lamp casting long shadows across the floor. And there, sitting behind the desk, was Blackwood himself. He didn't flinch when we entered, his eyes cold and calculating. He was expecting us. "I knew you'd come," he said, his voice smooth, like he had all the time in the world. "You've been digging around in places you shouldn't." The man stepped forward, his gun pointed straight at Blackwood's chest. "This ends tonight," he said, his voice hard with resolve. Blackwood chuckled softly, unfazed. "You think you can take me down?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're out of your depth." I could feel the tension crackling in the air, the moment stretched thin, about to snap. "You're done," the man said, his voice low, his finger tightening on the trigger. But Blackwood's smirk never wavered. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping on the desk, as if he were in control. "You really think you can stop what's coming?" he asked, his tone almost mocking. "The truth is bigger than you, and you're already too late." The words hung in the air like a threat, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if we were going to make it out of this alive. Blackwood wasn't just a man. He was the tip of an iceberg, and we had only scratched the surface. The air in the room felt like it was thick with anticipation. The tension between us and Blackwood was suffocating, each moment stretching out like an eternity. I could feel my heartbeat echoing in my ears, the sharpness of the silence pressing down on me. The man stood firm, his gun steady, aimed directly at Blackwood. But Blackwood wasn't fazed. He simply leaned back in his chair, the same smug grin still playing on his lips. "You think this is the end?" Blackwood's voice was calm, almost mocking. "You're not even close. You have no idea what's coming." His words hung in the air, ominous and dark. I wasn't sure what he meant, but I could tell from the way he spoke that he believed it. His confidence was unsettling. The man's finger twitched on the trigger, but he held off, his eyes narrowing. "You're finished, Blackwood. We're not walking away from this until you give us what we want." Blackwood tilted his head, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Oh, I'm sure you think you're in control here, but you're wrong. You've been chasing ghosts, running in circles, thinking you can take me down. But you're too late." I could feel the weight of his words, the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about one man anymore. This was about everything. About a network, a system of corruption that ran deeper than we could imagine. And now, it seemed like we were at the heart of it, with no way out. The man didn't flinch. His voice was steady, cold. "You're not getting away. Not this time." Blackwood leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving the man's face. "You want to know what's really going on? You want to know who's behind all of this?" His voice dropped to a whisper, as if sharing a secret, but it was laced with venom. "It's too late for you to change anything. You're already too deep in. You're both going to regret this. But there's no turning back now. No way out. The people I work with, the ones who really run things, they don't make mistakes. They won't let you live to tell the story. Not when you're this close." The man took a step forward, his eyes locking onto Blackwood's, unwavering. "I'm not afraid of you," he said, the words heavy with resolve. "And I'm not afraid of your network. We're ending this tonight." Blackwood laughed, the sound cruel and mocking. "You think it's that easy? You think you can just waltz in here and end everything? You're just one man and a little girl. You don't have the resources, the power, the influence to stop what's coming." I stepped forward, my hand gripping the edge of the desk, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "We're not alone," I said, my eyes locked on Blackwood's. "We'll find a way to stop you. No matter what." Blackwood's smile faltered for a split second, but it was enough. He was rattled. And for the first time, I felt like we were gaining ground. His eyes flicked to the door, as if weighing his options. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he said, his voice suddenly cold. "You're just pawns in a game that's been going on long before either of you showed up." The man's gun didn't waver. "And we're going to take you down," he said, his tone final. "You can either make it easy on yourself, or we can do this the hard way." Blackwood's smirk returned, but it was more strained now. "You're both fools." The words were barely out of his mouth when the door behind us slammed open. My heart leapt into my throat as I spun around, my hand flying to my side. A group of men, armed and dangerous, poured into the room. They were part of Blackwood's crew, and from the looks on their faces, they weren't here to talk. The man didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, he pulled me behind him, the gun still pointed at Blackwood, but now aimed at the new threat. "I should have known," Blackwood said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can just shoot your way through this? It's over. You've lost." The room exploded into chaos as the men moved toward us, guns drawn. The man fired first, taking down one of Blackwood's men in a flash. The rest of them scattered, diving for cover as the gunfire rang out. I scrambled for the nearest piece of cover, adrenaline surging through my veins. I couldn't let myself panic. Not now. I had a job to do. "Get down," the man shouted to me, his voice hard. I ducked behind a stack of crates, trying to steady my breathing, the weight of the situation heavy on my shoulders. I couldn't believe this was happening. The stakes had never been higher, and now, it was a race against time. Blackwood's men were closing in, and we had no way of knowing how many more were waiting for us. We had to end this now. The man fired again, taking down another man, but I could see his face. He was starting to tire. I had to act. I grabbed a piece of metal scrap from the floor, my fingers shaking as I prepared to make my move. This was it. We were at the edge, and there was no turning back. I could feel the tension crackling in the air as the gunfire continued to echo through the warehouse. My heart was racing, my mind focused on the task at hand. The man had already taken down 2 of Blackwood's men, but the rest of them were closing in fast, their guns aimed at us. We were trapped, surrounded by enemies, and there was no easy way out. I had to think, and fast. The sound of footsteps echoed through the room, a cold reminder that our time was running out. The man was still firing, his movements quick and precise, but I could tell he was starting to tire. The gunfire from the other side of the room was relentless, and I knew we had to make a move before it was too late. I glanced at the crates beside me. They provided some cover, but they wouldn't hold up forever. If we didn't act now, we'd be dead in seconds. The man's eyes met mine for a brief moment, and in that look, I saw everything. We were in this together, and we weren't going down without a fight. On my count, he muttered, his voice low and steady. We make a break for the door. I nodded, my fingers tightening around the piece of metal scrap I had grabbed earlier. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Ready? I whispered back, trying to calm the chaos in my mind. I wasn't sure how much longer we could keep this up. Every moment felt like an eternity, and every second we wasted brought us closer to being surrounded. 3, 2, 1. The man fired again, forcing the remaining gunmen to take cover. Without hesitation, we moved. I sprinted toward the door, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. The sound of footsteps pounding against the concrete floor drowned out everything else. My heart was in my throat as I dove behind a stack of crates just before the gunfire started again. I peeked around the corner, trying to assess the situation. The man was already at the door, his gun aimed at the shadows, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of movement. But the room was eerily quiet now. The gunfire had stopped. For a moment, I thought maybe we had won. Maybe we had a chance. But then I saw him, Blackwood. He stepped out from the shadows, his expression as calm and calculated as ever. There was no fear in his eyes, no sign of panic. He was completely unfazed. You're persistent, Blackwood said, his voice smooth, almost impressed. But you're too late. My pulse quickened as he slowly made his way toward us. You've walked right into the heart of it all, he continued, his words dripping with disdain. Everything you've done up until now? It's been for nothing. You're just playing a part in a much bigger game. The man's gun remained steady, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Blackwood wasn't just a criminal mastermind. He was the center of a web, and we were tangled in it. You don't get it, do you? Blackwood said, taking another step forward. You think you can take me down? I'm untouchable. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. We were too late. All of our efforts, all the digging, all the fighting had led us here. To a dead end. I glanced at the man beside me. His jaw was clenched, his eyes narrowed with fury. He wasn't about to let Blackwood get the best of us. We're not done yet, the man said, his voice low but fierce. He stepped forward, pushing past me and aiming his gun directly at Blackwood's chest. You're not untouchable. For a moment, everything stood still. The world seemed to hold its breath as Blackwood's cold, calculating eyes met the man's. He wasn't backing down, and neither were we. The tension was unbearable, but I knew something had to give. Blackwood's smile slowly faded, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. You really don't understand, do you? He said, his voice sharp now. You're playing with fire, and you have no idea how deep it goes. You're just one more casualty in this endless war. I could feel my anger rising, but I also felt something else, a deep sense of fear. Blackwood was right about one thing. We didn't fully understand what we were up against. And now, it seemed like it was too late to turn back. The man didn't flinch. We'll find a way to stop you, he said, his voice steady. No matter what it takes. Blackwood's smirk returned. You really think you're the first to try? He asked, almost as if he were humoring us. You're just a small part of the puzzle. And when you're gone, there'll be someone else, someone more powerful, ready to take your place. The words struck like a cold slap. For the first time, I realized just how small we were in the grand scheme of things. But that didn't mean we were going to give up. We couldn't. We'll see about that, the man said, his finger tightening on the trigger. In that moment, I knew one thing for sure. We had to stop Blackwood, no matter what it took. We couldn't let him get away. This fight was far from over, and I wasn't going to let it end here. The air in the room was thick with tension. The man's finger was still on the trigger, his gun aimed directly at Blackwood's chest. Blackwood, however, didn't seem fazed in the slightest. His cold eyes locked onto the man's, the faintest smirk curling at the corner of his lips. It was as though he was enjoying this, watching us struggle, knowing that he had the upper hand. You really think you can shoot your way out of this? Blackwood's voice was calm, almost mocking. You're already too late. The system's too big, too powerful. You're nothing but a blip on the radar. The man didn't flinch, his stance unwavering. We'll see about that, he said, his voice steady, though his grip on the gun tightened. He was giving Blackwood one last chance. You're not walking away from this. Not now. Blackwood's expression hardened. You're delusional, he replied, his eyes glinting with cold amusement. This game has been going on for years. You're just a pawn, and so am I, for that matter. None of us have control over this. But I know one thing. This ends when I say it ends. Not when you pull that trigger. I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. Was he right? Was this all just a game that we were too late to win? My mind raced, but I couldn't afford to hesitate. I couldn't let him get the best of us. I stepped forward, my hand hovering near my own weapon, ready to act if things escalated. The man's eyes flicked to me briefly, a silent message passing between us. Whatever happened next, we needed to stick together. We had no choice. You think you've got everything figured out, don't you? The man said, breaking the silence. His voice was quieter now, as though he was trying to read Blackwood, to figure out what move to make next. You think you've won. But you haven't. Not yet. For a moment, there was no movement in the room. Blackwood's gaze didn't waver. It was a standoff, each of us waiting for the other to make the first move. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, a sharp sound cut through the tension. A door behind Blackwood swung open, and another figure stepped into the room, a silhouette framed by the dim light. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't over yet. The figure stepped forward, the clink of boots on the concrete floor the only sound that filled the space. I couldn't make out the face at first, but the tall frame, the way the person moved, it was unmistakable. It was someone we knew, someone we hadn't expected to see. I see you've made yourself comfortable, Blackwood, the newcomer said, their voice low and smooth. Blackwood's eyes flicked toward the door, but there was no sign of surprise, only a resigned look. I should have known you'd show up, Blackwood said, his voice dripping with disdain. It's always the same. You think you can control everything, but in the end, you're just as much a pawn as the rest of us. The newcomer stepped fully into the light, revealing their face. It was someone I hadn't seen in years, but someone I remembered all too well. It was a woman, someone from the man's past, someone I had never expected to see again. I'm here to finish what we started, she said, her eyes cold and calculating as she looked at both of us. Her gaze lingered on the man for a moment longer than it should have, and I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders tightened. You can't stop what's coming, Blackwood said, his voice harsh now, his bravado slipping. This is bigger than you, bigger than all of us. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The woman didn't respond immediately. She just stood there, her expression unreadable. But then, she smiled, a sharp, almost sinister smile that sent a chill down my spine. We'll see about that, she said, her voice low and confident. The room felt like it was closing in on us, the air thick with the weight of the past, of choices made and mistakes we couldn't take back. I had no idea who this woman was or why she was here, but I knew one thing for sure. Everything had just changed. The man beside me didn't take his eyes off her. His hand never left his weapon, but I could tell that he was caught off guard by her presence. I had never seen him like this, and it made me uneasy. She had power over him, that much was clear. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable, as we all waited for someone to make the next move. I wasn't sure what was coming next, but I knew we couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Not now. The man's voice broke the silence. What do you want, Rachel? He asked, his tone sharp. The woman, Rachel, smiled again, this time with a hint of pity. What I want doesn't matter, she said. What matters is what you're willing to do to stop it. Her words hung in the air, a heavy promise, and in that moment, I realized the stakes were higher than I could have imagined. This wasn't just about taking down Blackwood anymore. This was about something far bigger, something that none of us could stop, not without making the hardest choices of our lives. The tension in the room was unbearable, every second stretched like an eternity. Rachel stood there, her presence commanding the space, her cold eyes locked on the man. He didn't flinch, but I could see it, the subtle shift in his posture, the way his jaw tightened. There was history here, something that neither of us fully understood, but I could feel it pressing down on both of them. Rachel, a figure from his past, and Blackwood, the mastermind we had come to stop. Everything felt like it was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and I wasn't sure if we were about to fall off, or if we could somehow find a way to climb back up. So, you're still playing both sides, the man finally said, his voice steady but laced with bitterness. Rachel's smile didn't waver. You never could see the bigger picture, could you? She replied, her tone mocking. This isn't about sides. It never was. It's about power, control. And you've always been too naive to see how deep it goes. I watched them, trying to piece together what was happening. Rachel wasn't just a part of this. She was a key player. But why had she shown up now? What did she want from us? You think you can just take down Blackwood and walk away from all of this? Rachel continued, her eyes flicking between the man and me. You don't realize what's at stake here. The system we've built, what we've worked for, it's not something you can just dismantle. It's bigger than both of you. Bigger than anyone. Then why are you here? The man's voice was sharp, demanding answers, but there was a tremor in his words, a crack in the facade he had built over the years. Rachel's smile turned more sinister. I'm here to make sure. You understand that you can't win. You never could. Blackwood shifted, his gaze turning cold. You're both fools, he said, his voice low and full of venom. You think you can stop me? You're already too late. You've been chasing ghosts this whole time. The game was over before it even started. I felt a surge of anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. We couldn't let him get to us. Not now. We're not done yet, I said, my voice steady, my eyes locked on Blackwood. You can try to control everything, but you're not invincible. Blackwood chuckled darkly. You think you can take me down with a few scraps of paper and some gunfire? You don't know what you're dealing with. Rachel stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. You're right about one thing, she said, her voice cold and calculating. You can't take him down that easily. But you're both too stubborn to see it. So go ahead, keep fighting. Keep chasing after something that doesn't exist. I'll be watching. And when it all falls apart, I'll be the one left standing. The man stepped forward, his jaw clenched in anger. You think this is about us? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but filled with so much force that it felt like the room shook. This is bigger than us. And if we're going down, we're taking you with us. Rachel's smile faltered for a second, just a flicker of doubt crossing her face before it vanished, replaced with a cold resolve. You don't get it, she said, her voice quieter now, almost sad. You were never meant to win. This was always bigger than you. And now, you're caught in the web, just like everyone else. I wasn't sure what to make of her words, but I knew one thing. We couldn't stop now. You're wrong, I said, my voice firm. We're going to stop him, and you're going to help us. Rachel's eyes met mine, her gaze sharp, piercing. You really think I'll help you? She asked, almost incredulously. You're too far gone. You don't even know who you're up against. The man took another step forward, his voice quiet but dangerous. Then tell us, he said, his tone steady but filled with a quiet fury. Tell us who's really behind all of this. Rachel hesitated for a moment, the faintest flicker of something in her eyes. But then she shook her head. You wouldn't understand, she said, her voice flat. You're not meant to understand. This isn't your fight anymore. She turned away from us, her heels clicking against the floor as she walked toward the door. You've already lost, she said over her shoulder. But if you want to keep fighting, go ahead. I'll be waiting when it all falls apart. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving us standing in the silence of the warehouse. Blackwood's mocking laughter still echoed in my ears. This is it, then, the man said, his voice low. There's no turning back now. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing. We couldn't give up. We couldn't let Rachel or Blackwood win. Not like this. Not when we were so close. We had to find a way to finish this. And no matter what, we weren't backing down. The room was silent, the tension still hanging thick in the air after Rachel's departure. Her words, filled with venom and doubt, echoed in my mind. You've already lost. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread, but it clung to me like a shadow. The man beside me didn't speak for a long time, his jaw tight and his eyes burning with an intensity one hadn't seen before. We had come this far, fought tooth and nail to get here, but now it seemed like we were up against a wall we couldn't break. Blackwood's words haunted me as well. You're just pawns in a game that's been going on long before either of you showed up. He was right in one sense. We hadn't started this. But damn it, we weren't going to let it end with us giving up. The man finally broke the silence, his voice cold but filled with a quiet resolve. "She's wrong," he said, his words cutting through the air like a blade. "We're not done. Not yet." I could feel the fire in his words, the unrelenting drive to finish what we had started. It was the same fire I felt in my chest. We had made mistakes, we had been led astray, but we weren't giving up now. The fight wasn't over. I stepped forward, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "What do we do next?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. The man didn't hesitate. "We go after them. We find where they're hiding, and we end this. We take down Blackwood and everyone who's been part of this web." He paused, his eyes locking onto mine, his expression fierce. "This ends now, one way or another." His words were a promise. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I felt a flicker of hope. It was a small spark, but it was enough. We had nothing left to lose. We had already risked everything just to get this far. There was no turning back. We had to move fast. We had to strike before Blackwood could disappear, before his network could close ranks and erase us. The man turned toward the door, his hand still gripping his weapon, ready for whatever came next. I followed him, my heart pounding, my mind racing. We moved through the building, past the wreckage of what we had left behind, the sound of our footsteps echoing in the silence. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air was thick with the promise of more. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath. We reached the car, and as the engine roared to life, I knew that we were no longer just fighting for survival. We were fighting for the truth, for justice, for the chance to make this right. The city loomed ahead, dark and sprawling, but we were ready. We had our plan, and now we just had to put it into action. The man drove with a sense of urgency, the road ahead uncertain, but the destination clear. We knew where we had to go, and we knew what had to be done. The only question was whether we'd make it in time. "They're getting ready," the man said, his voice low, his eyes scanning the road ahead. "We don't have long." "Then let's make it count," I said, my voice steady. We finished this. The streets blurred past us, the city lights casting fleeting shadows as we made our way through the heart of it all. My mind raced as I thought of everything we had learned, everything we had uncovered. Blackwood's empire, his network, it was all connected. The deeper we dug, the more we realized how far-reaching it all was. But we couldn't back down. Not now. We reached the outskirts of the city, the building looming in the distance, and I could feel the air around us change. This was it. The final stand. The man slowed the car as we approached, his eyes focused on the entrance. "Stay alert," he said, his voice sharp. "This is where it all comes to a head." We stepped out of the car, the weight of the moment heavy on our shoulders. The building ahead was dark, the windows like hollow eyes staring back at us. I could feel my breath catch in my throat, but I didn't hesitate. We had come this far, and we weren't walking away empty-handed. The door creaked as the man pushed it open, his gun raised, his eyes scanning the shadows inside. We moved quickly, silently, ready for whatever waited for us in the dark. As we reached the heart of the building, the air felt thick with danger. Blackwood's men were here, somewhere, waiting. We couldn't afford to lose focus now. This was the moment we had been preparing for. The man looked at me, his face set with determination. "We do this now," he said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. No turning back. We stepped into the room, the darkness swallowing us whole, and as the door slammed shut behind us, I knew one thing for sure. We were going to take down Blackwood, and we weren't leaving until it was over. In these intense Hell Angels stories, the journey through chaos and mystery reaches its peak as the characters dive deep into the underworld of corruption, power, and betrayal. With each new revelation, the stakes grow higher, and the fight for justice becomes more personal. As secrets unfold, our protagonists push forward, determined to unravel the tangled web that threatens to consume everything. From tense standoffs to unexpected alliances, the characters find themselves trapped between a rock and a hard place, with no easy way out. These Hell Angel stories are not just about survival. They are about seeking the truth, no matter the cost. The story takes us through dark alleys, dangerous confrontations, and heart-pounding moments that will leave you at the edge of your seat. As the characters fight against time and enemies, they uncover a conspiracy so vast that it makes them question everything they've ever known. In the end, these Hell Angel stories show that even in the darkest of times, the fight for what's right is never over. Follow the twists and turns of this thrilling journey and discover what happens when loyalty and justice collide. These Hell Angels stories are a testament to resilience, determination, and the lengths one will go to in order to bring down those who control the shadows.